We started the show with the mic muted. We started that way today. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. Holy cow. Welcome everybody to the show. I apologize for the extra long intro and starting the show with the mic muted. Can we do a redo? Can we start over? Okay. Since I started the show with the mic muted, I will do what I say I will do, and we will give Xena a dog treat. Uh, Anybody new here? I doubt there's anybody new here, but if I speak while my mic is muted, or if you decide to support the show by donating, Xena gets a treat on air. Xena, you lucked out. You lucked out today. We started with the show muted. I can't believe that just happened. There you go. Xena appreciates it. I don't. You guys don't, but we do what we can. So today, I've been planning this episode for a very long time. I've been talking about it for probably 2 months, which is when I started the research on this. And then I wanted to get this out while the Olympics were still going on. And as far as I know, the Olympics closing ceremonies is in a couple hours from now. So, although they're ahead of us in time, so it's probably happening right now. I don't know. But show is about the 1996 Olympic bombing that happened here in Atlanta. If you guys don't know, I live in North Georgia, not in Atlanta, but near enough. Like Atlanta's the closest city that I would go to. I'm trying to think if Chattanooga's closer, but it's not. I think Atlanta is the closest one. Anyway, when I was a kid, I was a teenager at the time in 1996, and my family went to the 1996 Olympics. So I have firsthand experience with this thing that happened in Atlanta. And so yeah, let me say hi to everybody who's here. Christo, good to see you. Society Red, I got your email today. Sorry I didn't email you back, but I will look at that email a little later because I was busy getting this all set up when you sent it. Yo mama, always good to see you. Number 2, holding down the fort over there. Number 2, you're in charge today. I have it on good authority that Erica is busy and will not be here. Floor Jim, Great to see you. Quest Fanning, always a pleasure, Quest. I'm glad you could make it. And we need peace. Thanks for coming. Okay. Somebody just said I'm still muted. Am I not? I'm not still muted, am I? No, you can hear me now. You can hear me now. Anyway, we are starting off in Atlanta. This is going to take us all over the Southeast. This tale has a lot of twists and turns in it. But the main thing that was like the big headlines was the one in Atlanta. But this guy goes over all over the Southeast. And then we got another character named Richard Jewell, who the FBI and media just had a magic wand and said, "You're a criminal now, ding," and he was not. We'll get into that as well. There's a lot of, like I said, twists and turns in this story. But on July 26, 1996, people from all over the world were gathered in Centennial Olympic Park. 1 week earlier, athletes from 197 different countries gathered in Atlanta for the 26th Olympiad. We're live right now. Let me put this up on the park. So Centennial Olympic Park is located here in Atlanta, like right in the middle. And previous to the Olympics coming to town, there was some old buildings here, kind of an abandoned sort of area, and they tore all that down and built this beautiful park here. And this is the park today. This is not exactly what it looked like in 1996, but you can see it's a pretty big area. And at the time of the Olympics, there was like concerts and stuff. They would have every night where people would gather when they weren't at the Olympic events and stuff like that. And hang out. I was actually at Centennial Olympic Park 2 days, I believe, before the bombing happened. We were down there. We saw the women's gymnastics in 1996, which was amazing, by the way. I should tell you guys a little bit about my experience at going to the actual Olympics. I was since Mary Lou Retton, when I was a child, was such a big fan of the Olympics. I loved it. And finally it was in the United States. And not only was it in the United States, it was in a place where I had family that lived. You guys know I grew up in Chicago at the time in 1996. I lived in Chicago, but I had aunts and uncles and grandparents, and my sister lived in Atlanta at the time. So we had all sorts of family down in Atlanta. So we did end up going to the Olympics. Let me pull up my slideshow that I made for you guys. Let me know. This is the second week that I've done a little slideshow. Let me know if you like that or if I'm wasting my time making that little presentation. So this is the Olympic Park back in 1996, and you can see, it's a pretty big area. This is the sound tower that we're going to talk about in a minute, and right over here is the stage to the right. I forgot, you guys can't see my mouse right now, but that big tower in the middle, that looks like it's like 5 or 6 stories high. That's the sound tower where the bomb actually went off at, and then all the way in the right-hand corner, at the bottom is the stage. So it was a hot and humid night, and the Jack Mack and the Heart Attack was on stage entertaining the crowd. They were, everybody in the audience was singing and dancing along, and at 12:58 a.m., now we're on the 27th because midnight rolled past, on the 27th, an Atlanta 911 operator receives a call from a man who was obviously trying to disguise his voice, and the caller said, "Let me disguise my voice. There is a bomb in Centennial Olympic Park. You have 30 minutes." The whole call was later determined to have been made from a bank of cell phones that was near the Centennial Olympic Park. I told myself to switch to the next slide, but I don't even know what the slide is. Oh, this is after the attack. So, Centennial Olympic Park, I know I told you guys that it was new. Like, they built this park for the Olympics. So, the 911 operator had no idea where it was. She knew that Centennial Olympic Park existed, but she didn't know what the address was. And of course, the caller just made that ominous message and hung up right away, right? And so it took her a while to get the police dispatched. She- First of all, I'm going off script here. There was a first phone call where the person, the bomber who made the call, was like telling all of his, like, reasons why he was setting off the bomb, but the 911 operator didn't understand what he was saying. He was disguising his voice way too much. She didn't get it, and she hung up on him. So he ended up going to a second bank of payphone, or he ended up going to a second bank of payphones and just saying, "Hey, there's a bomb, 30 minutes. It's in Centennial Olympic Park," and that's it. So Centennial Olympic Park, like I said, it was brand new, built for the Olympics, and, the way it was built was through sponsors. So Coca-Cola, AT&T, and Swatch, all of these companies were heavily advertised in this park, and they basically paid to build this place just so they could advertise. Early news reports of the bombing pointed out a person of interest named Richard Jewell. Now, Richard Jewell didn't have anything to do with it. I'm sure you guys know that by now. You've all seen the movie Richard Jewell, right? If you haven't, checked that out. It's pretty good. Let me put some let me put some news footage on in the background just without sound. Um, well, actually, we'll play a little bit of this right now, like the early reports. There we go.
And I really got chills as I watched this video over again. We want you to take a look.
We don't know exactly how this is going to impact the competitions themselves. I imagine they will go on, but it's hard to say. It's going to be very hard for people to get around under these circumstances because they have cordoned off downtown. So seriously, you're seeing pictures now, obviously, that are very soon after this thing happened. The place, when we say it wasn't as full as it had been, as you can see.
So you can see right there, this is the sound tower where it happened, and you can see the damage on it in this news broadcast.
There were a considerable amount, a number of people downtown at the time that this thing happened, and all of them down here to enjoy themselves, to have a good time, and then this happened. It could have been worse in terms of the amount of people that were around it, but it's plenty bad enough with the reports that we're hearing. There have been some very, very serious injuries. This was, I don't know the magnitude of the device, but it went off with a bang and a loud large orange flash that Shelley has been telling us about.
Okay, so we can't I mean, he doesn't know what's going on yet. This is just the very first report, so I'm gonna go on with this news footage in the background and tell you guys what's happening here. If I could get my notes in front of me. Okay, so early reports pointed out a person of interest named Richard Jewell. Richard Jewell was a security guard that was hired for the 2 weeks of the Olympics. He was hired by AT&T. Since AT&T sponsored all of this stuff, they hired their own security for it. And there was heavy security in Atlanta during these 2 weeks of the Olympics, which I would assume anytime you have a world event going on, there's going to be escalated security, right? So he was stationed to guard that sound tower in Centennial Olympic Park on the night of July 26th through the morning of July 27th. And he noticed some rowdy teenagers on the green benches at the foot of the tower. The kids were in their late teens, possibly early 20s, but they were very young, too young to be drinking. And they were all pretty drunk and they were like roughhousing. And he noticed them and he sort of shooed them away, said, "Move along, you can't be here wasted like that," right? I should turn the chat back on so I can see if anybody what you guys are saying. S Okay, Richard Jewell, remembering his training. Okay, so he sees that once the kids moved along, there's a backpack that's left behind. It's a green, like a dark green backpack, and keep in mind the theme color of these Olympics was dark green, so it was very usual to see a dark green anything around, but he sees there's a backpack. He remembers his training, so he starts to move people away from the bag that was left behind, kind of being overzealous because most people would not automatically think, oh, this is a bomb, right? But not that he thought that it was a bomb. He just knew that he was supposed to move people away from a suspicious package. So he started doing that. The GBI bomb squad, he like notified on his little walkie-talkie that, what was happening. And the GBI bomb squad expert guy moves in. He lays the bag down, he opens it up, and from Richard Jewell's accounts, this dude's face like turns white and he also starts moving people away. He gets away from the bag almost immediately and starts moving people away from this bag. It was a green US military Alice containing 3 pipe bombs filled with smokeless powder surrounded by 3-inch long masonry nails. And an Alice bag is an all-purpose lightweight individual carrying equipment. I didn't know what it was either, but they kept describing it as an Alice bag. And I'm like, what the heck is an Alice bag? So that's what it is. At 1:25 a.m., some of the sources I found said 1:20, but most of the news sources said 1:25. A 40-pound pipe bomb explodes. One woman is killed, Alice Hawthorne, who was there visiting from Albany, Georgia. Like, she had come up with her family for the Olympics. She was killed, and 111 other people were injured. Now, on some news reports, you hear that 2 people were killed. But the other guy that was killed was a Turkish news reporter, and he died of a heart attack while rushing to the scene to cover the bombing. He didn't die because of I guess technically he died because of the bombing, but it drives me nuts when they're like, oh, 2 people died, but 2 people did not. Let's check in on this news coverage here for a minute and see what they're saying.
Taking out, I don't know what, it would be speculation at this point, but they were ambulances that were driving out slowly and not in a hurry, so I'm not quite sure what that means at this point. I'm sorry, I was trying to observe that, Karen, and didn't get the full intent of your question. What were you asking?
That's fine, Lee. I know you've got quite a lot going on around you there over Centennial Park. Just trying to get an idea of, in the plan, with international media people, if in the plan ACOG had given you any idea, given you guys any word on what kinds of things to expect if in fact...
Yeah, they don't know anything yet. Anyway, so immediately after the bombing, Richard Jewell's hailed as a hero. He's on CNN. He's on Good Morning America. He's on all these news stations because he's the one who found the bomb and he was a hero. He got so many people out of the way of the blast that way more people could have died during this attack. And I found out recently, actually, that the way the real bomber built this is he put like a plate in the back of the knapsack or of the Alice bag or whatever and pointed it kind of away from the crowds. But when the bomb expert came in and laid it down before he opened it up, it made it so it was pointing up. So then the metal plate that was in there that was supposed to point the shrapnel kind of away from the crowd was now pointing straight up in the sky. So it was going 360 every direction once it was laid down. That's neither here nor there. Like, it was still a bomb, right? One of the interviews with Richard Jewell, he said, and I quote, "The only thing I wish we could have done is got everyone out of the area. I feel for the victims and their families. I mean, it's the Olympics. It's supposed to be a time of joy for the world. And this is a very, very bad thing." So now the media starts to turn on Richard Jewell. The FBI questioned Richard Jewell just because was there, and like they're going to question everybody who was in the area, right? One of these journalists from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution used, from some reports, unsavory methods, degenerate methods to gain information from an FBI agent who was close to the case. And this law enforcement person released the name of Richard Jewell and said that they were questioning the security guard that found the bomb. The next day, the AJC published an article entitled FBI suspects hero guard of having planted the bomb. Now, I don't know if that's exactly what was said or if I mean, it's a pretty big leap, right? That they're questioning somebody who was there to this is our suspect. Either way. Where's my presentation? There it is. I have these news articles pulled up in here. So yeah, this is the copy of the newspaper from that day. FBI suspects hero guard may have planted bomb. And of course they have the sad pictures of people crying with the shrapnel around them and stuff like that. So later on that day of this news article coming out, CNN picks up the news story. So now it's going national. CNN was pretty new back then of doing 24-hour news coverage. And so now in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, they didn't specifically say Richard Jewell. They just said that the hero guard may have planted the bomb. And of course, Richard Jewell was the hero guard who found the bomb and was on CNN the day before. So like CNN just go out like flat out names him. And the news outlets start going into these deep dives on Richard Jewell's life and having self-proclaimed criminal profilers on their program to say he fit the profile of someone who'd do such a thing, and he was a wannabe cop, and he had a hero complex and all of these things. So they have all of these experts on saying these horrible things about Richard Jewell. So the FBI does follow-up interviews with Richard Jewell, and once all of this stuff hit the news, he couldn't even leave his house. He was staying with his mom because his mom lived here in the Atlanta area. I think she lived in Stone Mountain, but at the time of the Olympics, so he was staying with his mom so he could work security during the Olympics. And her house was just inundated. The apartment complex she lived in, like you couldn't even get out of the parking lot because there's all these news satellite vans and stuff in the parking lot just watching his every move. Some not so cool stuff that the FBI did. They told Richard Jewell to get him down for another interview. They're like, "Hey, Richard, you're such a hero that we want to do a training video, and we want you to be in it, Richard. So we're going to do a training video and question you about finding this bomb and moving people away and all that." And then during the fake training video, they read him his Miranda rights as if it's part of the production of this training video and claim that that's good enough for reading him his Miranda rights, which is just insane to me. That really happened. That's in the Richard Jewell movie, and I looked into it, and that really happened. They thought that they could get away with that. It's crazy. It's crazy. So for 3 months, there was like daily media reports about Richard Jewell and about like his life and how he was a security guard at a college and he was a sheriff's deputy in this small town. And then he moved here and he did this, and just all of these horrible things. These news places were spreading all this information about him that, I mean, it technically was true, but then they were getting these experts on to say, well, yeah, that's something that a domestic terrorist would do. The AJC quoted acquaintances of Richard Jewell who recalled him owning a similar backpack to the one that held the bomb. Officials at Piedmont College, where he was the security guard, called him overly zealous security guard because he like came down on like the frat guys for drinking too much and stuff like that. Like he was just doing his job, but he was doing it. He didn't look the other way on stuff, which is what you want in a security guard, I would think. So on October 26, 1996, so this is 3 months later, the U.S. Attorney in Atlanta, Kent Alexander, sent Jewell a letter saying, based on the evidence developed to date, Richard Jewell is not considered a target of a federal criminal investigation into the bombing on July 27, 1996 at Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. The letter didn't say anything about, hey, we're sorry for how we treated you. The news outlets did not pick it up or report on it at all. So for years, people just thought that Richard Jewell was the guy who did the bombing, but they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him yet. For years, this guy just like lived as a hermit because he couldn't go outside of his house without somebody thinking he blew up the Olympics. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So the real bomber, the whole time, the whole world was focused on Richard Jewell. Eric Robert Rudolph made his way back into the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina and hid out. In the spring of 1995, now we're going back to before the Olympics, Eric Rudolph made the decision that he needed to do something, and he was inspired by Paul Jennings Hill. Paul Jennings Hill, in case you don't know who that is, in 1994, in July of 1994, Hill approached the Lady Center, which is an abortion clinic in Pensacola, and he spotted the clinic doctor, John Britton, and his bodyguard, a retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel James H. Barrett, outside the clinic. He fired on both of them at close range with a Mossberg Model 500A 12-gauge pump shotgun. Both Britton and Barrett died, and Barrett's wife, June, was also wounded. Following the shots, Hill laid down his shotgun on the ground and waited to be arrested. So he watched the media coverage also of Ruby Ridge had happened a couple of years earlier, and the year before Waco went down. So he's seeing all of this stuff, and he's like, well, I need to join the fight. And with the Olympics coming up the following year and only a couple hours from his house, he's like, well, that's like the perfect place to do it. Rudolph believed that the Olympics' sole purpose was to promote the ideals of globalism, and even worse than that, corporate globalism. He chose Centennial Olympic Park because of the corporate sponsors who had poured millions of dollars building a place specifically to advertise in. Governments and corporations had indeed invested close to $1 billion in the Atlanta Olympics. So Eric Rudolph decides, yeah, I need to do something. He sells his house off of Highway 19 in Marble, North Carolina. He sold almost all of his belongings. He began to prepare. He made sure he didn't tell anybody about his plans, by the way. He just he knew that if he told anybody, like loose lips sink ships sort of thing. So he was literally a lone wolf. He didn't tell anybody. He didn't get any help from anybody. Put it that way. Okay, so 6 weeks before the Olympics, he started to hide caches of food and supplies in the mountain ranges in the wilderness of the Fires Creek and Snowbird Mountains. His original idea was to damage the power grid in Atlanta, but decided that the disruption of a blackout would not be like big enough. Like they would just continue with the games, like they would restore the power and nothing would happen. So instead, he decided on the bombing at Centennial Olympic Park. Eric Rudolph made his way to Asheville to a place called Austin Powder. And this is a company that supplies explosives to rock quarries and construction crews located in Asheville, North Carolina. After surveilling the place from a nearby ridge, he made his way down to Austin Power and broke the padlock off of the storage shed and helped himself to 50 pounds of dynamite. Here's the dynamite right here on the screen. This is some that they found after he was arrested, by the way. Like he had more. Just kind of scary. He did, Life to the Max is asking in the chat if he ended up suing. He did end up suing several different news outlets, and most of them settled with him. Everybody except for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution actually settled with him. Like, just gave him money to go away. So all right, I gotta clear my throat for this. So after everything is said and done, after we get to the end of the story, Eric Rudolph wrote a book that I read. I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book regarding his break-in at Austin Powder. Fortunately, I'd chosen the right bunker. In the pale glow of my red lens flashlight, I scanned the boxes of dynamite that were stacked against the walls. I sliced open a box to examine the cigar-shaped sticks wrapped in brown wax paper. I'd hit the jackpot. One 50-pound box fit perfectly in my duffel bag. I shouldered the duffel of dynamite and carried it over the strands of barbed wire and across the cow pasture, where I followed the trail that meandered a quarter mile along the bluff above the river. It was a simple cow path, wet and muddy from recent rain. As I sloshed through the path, my heavy load pushed me shin deep in the mixture of mud and manure. The sticky mud almost pulled my boots off my feet. At one point, I leaned too far forward and fell flat on my face in the putrid mire. By the way, it's called Between the Lines of Drift, Eric Rudolph's book. It's pretty good. As you guys know, I'm not a good reader. I don't read a lot. I like to listen to audiobooks. This was not available in audiobook form, so I actually read it. It was a pretty good read. Highly recommend if you like that sort of stuff. So a week before the July 27th attack, Eric Rudolph did a test run. He drove down to Atlanta, parked his truck, and made his way to Centennial Olympic Park. Now, the 27th, when this happened, was the week halfway in between. You know, the Olympics is 2 weeks long, so it happened like the midway point of the Olympics. So he went down there when the Olympics was first starting and did this test run. So he parked on like not such a great, not like away from the park in a not so good neighborhood. He took mental notes of where all the cameras were, where the payphones were, because he knew he was going to want to call in a warning to hopefully clear out the people before it went off. And how easy it was to get through the security checkpoints. He went through the security entrance at Baker Street. And in the evenings, the guards were not even checking the bags. During the day, apparently they were checking the bags like a little better, and then towards the evenings they were just like letting people in, like when most people were leaving for the day and there were still some people coming in, they weren't even checking them. So he got his backpack in with no issues at all. What did happen to him was when he got back to his truck after the test run, he found that his passenger side window was broken and some of his tools were missing. So that's what you get, Eric Rudolph, I guess. The next week, he packed his military backpack with the explosives and made his way back to Atlanta. He passed through those same Baker Street security entrance checkpoint, and he planted the bag underneath the bench at the foot of the, let's go back to that picture, at the foot of the tower, which is right here. Sitting on the bench with the bag between his knees, he reached down into the bag and set the timer and just walked away. He walked swiftly to the bank of payphones on Simpson Street and made the 911 call. The operator hung up on him. He walked to the next block down, and there was another bank of cell phones in front of a Days Inn. And he called, and that's when he did the disguised voice call about there being a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes. That was from the bank of payphones that was in front of the Days Inn. At 1:20 or 1:25, depending on who you ask, the bomb in Centennial Park detonated. Rudolph had planted an additional bomb near a trash can on Techwood Drive. About an hour after the first explosion, a second, much smaller explosion went off on Techwood Drive, injuring 7 people. And keep in mind, the main explosion injured 111 people, and 1 lady died. He went back to the hills of North Carolina and hid out in the woods for 3 weeks after this first attack. He was thinking they were going to be coming for him, so he was already in the woods. He left his house, He didn't. He had those caches of different, supplies and food, like dry food and stuff like that, and no one ever came for him. So he started planning another attack. With the anniversary of Roe versus Wade just around the corner, Eric Rudolph decided that his next target needed to be an abortion clinic, and this is in Sandy Springs. I have a map. Here we go. Share this tab instead. Yes, please. So this is just off of Roswell Road. I'll zoom out a little bit here. Let's get north. There we go. So this is Roswell Road here, and the abortion clinic is right here. It's in this building. There we go. It's an interesting looking bit, like interesting architecture on this building, don't you think? Life to the Max doesn't know what a bank of cell phones is. It's a bunch of cell phones lined up next to each other. Anyway, so this office building has more than just an abortion clinic in it. There's a law office in there. There was also a methadone clinic in there at the time, other different businesses. But apparently he didn't care about that. His main target was the abortion clinic. So about a month before, he drove down from North Carolina to Atlanta and scoped out many different abortion clinic locations, and he settled on this one. Northside Family Planning Services in Sandy Springs. It's on Carpenter Drive Northeast, just off of Roswell Road. On the morning of January 16th, 1997, he parked at a post office parking lot about a half a mile away, and he walked to the clinic. He planned his attack for a Thursday when the abortionists would be there, but no patients would be present. This clinic did not see patients on Thursdays. They did like paperwork and like cleaned and stuff like that on Thursdays. So he planned it for a Thursday. He had 2 devices with him. One of them was set to go off at 9:30 and the second one at 10:15. And the reason why he had 2 devices is because the second one, he wanted to actually injure the first responders. So the police and like the FBI or whoever shows up to respond to this bombing, that's who he was trying to injure with this. It wasn't necessarily the general public, but unfortunately the general public is who was injured in all of this. The first bomb was placed right outside the building. If you can see this building has like floor to ceiling slit windows in it. And I think it was actually on this side. Let's go over here. It was on this side of the building where the abortion clinic was. It was like right over here. So he set the first one outside of the operating room, like where the procedures were taking place, on the ground outside the window of the operating room. But keep in mind, like it's floor to ceiling windows, so it's going to go through the glass, obviously. The second bomb was placed in a dumpster, which was located about here at the time. There's no dumpster there now. I wonder if we can see. Let's go back in time a little bit. Oh, you can see the cement pad where the dumpster used to be. So there used to be a dumpster here. You can see the cement pad. So this is where the second one was located. The first one was up against the building. The second one was not in the dumpster, next to the dumpster in like a bush over here. Once the bombs were placed, Eric casually strolled back to his car, cutting through an apartment complex and then a Kmart parking lot. He said he was trying to avoid the main road as much as possible. Let's watch a couple little news clips from this.
The first explosion about 9:30 this morning blew. The first explosion about 9:30 this morning blew out windows at the North Atlanta Family Planning Clinic. 10 people were in the building, 4 in the first floor doctor's offices. No one was hurt.
It only lasted for a few seconds, so you're basically shocked. You really didn't know what was going on at the time.
Where were you in the building and where was the explosion?
Oh my God!
This second explosion, about an hour later, injured a television photographer, an ATF agent, and at least 4 others.
Get back! Everybody get back! Let's go!
That blast, felt for miles, tore through a dumpster on the other side of the building.
Whoa! We got a bomb that just went off!
Additional security was dispatched to all Atlanta abortion clinics. while the bomb squad scoured the area for another device.
Everybody get back!
No one has claimed credit for these explosions. Police say there were no calls to 911 beforehand, and clinic workers received no threats.
Our OR room and our recovery room is gone.
Oh, wow.
This is Susanna.
So it's inside as opposed to right outside the wall.
It's inside the clinic.
So do you think
our whole clinic is gone?
This same clinic was bombed 13 years ago in a different Atlanta location. But authorities are not sure today's bombs were actually targeting the abortion offices.
As far as a motive, I know a lot of you are assuming this is related to abortion clinic violence. That is definitely a possibility, but we are not ruling out the possibility of domestic terrorism unrelated to clinic violence.
Agents would not reveal what kind of explosives were found, but say they will check first to see if they are connected to last summer's explosion at the Atlanta Olympics. Perhaps most troubling, police say, was the timing of today's explosions. The stronger of the two set to go off just after federal agents arrived. Bob Dotson, NBC News.
I didn't talk. Thanks, Bob. I was this close to talking with my mic muted, but I didn't do it. So I would just want to share this. This is the person that was injured, that was the news cameraman, did an interview about a week later, and I found it very interesting. So I wanted to share this with you guys as well, just to show what kind of damage. Like I know in Eric Rudolph's head, he is targeting abortion clinics, right? He is thinking like, how do I put this? He's thinking these people are killing babies every day. So what does it matter if I kill them? That's what is in his head. That's not what I'm saying necessarily, but who he's actually injuring is just random people. Like this guy was just doing his job for the news. He's a cameraman for the news. And this is who was injured. The woman at the Olympics was just like, he's not doing anything to combat globalism. It was just some lady from Athens, Georgia, or from Albany, Georgia, who was there with her family to see the Olympics. That's who he's injuring. It's maddening.
Here, man, this is where I was standing. I gotta go over here, man. This is where I was standing by this dumpster.
WGNX News photographer Randy Page wanted to retrace his every step, his every shot the day the bomb went off. He was standing right beside the dumpster taking a picture of the building when he went to get a shot of a couple embracing. It was the shot that took him away from the bomb and saved his life.
Thank God I'm alive. Man, this is tight. This is tense. Because I'm on the other side. But I gotta get a shot of this dumpster.
Back at the scene more than a week later, Randy's nerves quickly gave way to his instincts, even taking close-up shots of the crater left by the bomb.
That's a serious hole.
Randy has lost more than half of his hearing in one ear. His counselor told him taking pictures of the scene will help heal the mental wounds.
Man, I'll never forget this. Wow.
Later, he wanted to see for the first time the tape he shot that day.
Oh, man.
Watching it over and over again.
Oh, man. Boom, that's when I knew something was wrong with my ears. I was hurting real bad. This is very emotional, I mean, to come back here. But I feel good because I wanted to face this. I mean, I'm not going to make this say, okay, I'm done after 10 years of shooting.
Yeah, so I found his story compelling. I thought it was very sad. Oh, that was tough. Let's get the notes back up in front of me. Thank you, Might Be Wrong, for sharing the Crisis King collection on my at katiesed.com. I have the mug right here. Any money collected from the sale of the Crisis King collection goes towards the charity onemorechild.org, which is, they do help struggling families and women who decide not to have an abortion. So Go over there, check that out. Get a t-shirt, get a mug, whatever you like. Sorry. I should have checked this during. Okay, sorry. I got distracted there for a minute. All right. Where's the notes? By the time the first bomb went off, Eric Rudolph was already on 400, headed north, back towards North Carolina. He was listening to the radio at the time, and as he approached Blairsville, he heard the report that the second device had detonated. So he set the timers and walked away from this one. He did the same thing at the Olympic one. He just set the timers and walked away. At least 6 people were injured, including an investigator from the ATF, 2 FBI agents, a firefighter, an ambulance worker, and that gentleman that we just saw, the television cameraman. Eric Rudolph returned to his home located on Vengeance Creek, which is remarkable, in Marble, North Carolina. How do you choose a place called Vengeance Creek, and meanwhile you're planning all of these attacks? Like, was that on purpose? I wonder. I don't know if it was or not. But he lived on Vengeance Creek in Marble, North Carolina at the time, and he had all of his bags packed and ready to go to leave at a moment's notice. He said he had put some supplies in the back of his pickup truck, like just ready to bug out at any moment, but he didn't hide out in the woods this time because they never came looking for him last time. He immediately started planning his next attack. The next attack was just a month later at the Other Side Lounge, and that one is also in Atlanta. He just keeps coming down to Atlanta. It was at the time located here on Piedmont Road. Interesting thing about this one, this is where it was. And if we go back, we'll be able to see it here. I thought you could see it. Hold on, let's move up the road a little bit. Yeah, so this was the Other Side Lounge back in the day. They closed shortly after this next attack, but this is where it was. Interesting thing is this massage parlor right next door in 2021, that was the subject of national news as well, because if you remember, there was a gentleman from Georgia who went to different Asian spas and shot them up. And this is one of the spas that was shot up on that day in 2021. But back to the main story. The Other Side Lounge on February 21st, 1997 in Atlanta, approximately 9:45, a bomb exploded at the Other Side Lounge, and that was a lesbian bar. It damaged the building and destroyed several cars in the parking lot. Similar to the Sandy Springs bombing, Eric Rudolph came down to Atlanta to find his target, the target of his next attack. He came down beforehand, scoped out a bunch of places. He chose the Other Side Lounge because after the attack at Northside Family Planning, all of the abortion clinics in the area were heavily guarded. So Eric Rudolph decided to switch his sights on what he called a sodomite organization. Here's another excerpt from the book that he wrote. This is from Between the Lines of Drift, written by Eric Rudolph. A few days after moving to the new house, I began planning another attack. The bombing in Sandy Springs had put the nation's abortion mills on high alert. Washington dispatched federal marshals to watch over the baby killers to ensure that they met their daily quota of butchered babies. I would have to shift my sights elsewhere. In Washington, there was talk of bringing the federal hate crimes bill back to the floor of Congress. The law would include special protections for sodomites, elevating them to the aristocracy of official victims. Liberals had been trying to pass the bill since the Reagan era, but until now, they were never able to muster up the necessary number of votes. I wanted to weigh in on the debate. I flipped through the Atlanta phone book and newspapers looking for a sodomite organization to make my point. So these are his words. Oop, I zoomed. The Other Side Lounge was a nightclub located at 1924 Piedmont Road in Northeast Atlanta that catered primarily to lesbians and other LGBT patrons. Let me get the slideshow back up. I wish there was a way to jump to whatever slide I was on instead of just starting at the beginning each time. There it is. So that's what it looked like back in 1997 when this happened. On February 21st, 1997, Eric Rudolph parked his truck in an industrial zone that was close to the highway on-ramp. He passed through the Waffle House parking lot and then through the parking lot of the Motel 6. He crossed the street and placed the first bomb on the back patio of the Other Side Lounge. Rudolph had placed the second bomb that goes off in the wood line earlier that day. The first one, he waited until right before it was going to go off to place it. At 9:45 on February 21st, 1997, the bomb on the back patio detonated. 5 people were injured, one of which was seriously injured. The Atlanta police bomb squad arrived at the scene within minutes and discovered the second device in the wood line. The police robot was sent in and began spraying it with water. And right when they started spraying with water, the bomb detonated.
Brian Williams.
Good evening. The city of Atlanta.
News reported by Brian Williams.
Good evening. The city of Atlanta might have a big problem on its hands. Again today, the people of that city woke up to find out there had been a bomb planted somewhere, an explosion that was supposed to be just the first of 2 planned explosions. There have been 5 bombs now in 7 months there. Suddenly, Atlanta's mayor thinks his city might be in the sights of what he calls a deranged killer. We get the latest now from Atlanta and NBC's Bob Dotson.
Once again, a bomb in the night. Once again, a second bomb discovered after the first one goes off. It happened outside a lesbian club called The Other Side.
Upon arrival, the SWAT team members discovered a backpack that appeared suspicious to them.
A police robot shot it with a stream of water about 2 this morning, and it exploded. Authorities were investigating another bombing at the same club when they found the backpack. The first bomb injured 5 people, 1 seriously.
You know what I mean? There was a bunch of people in there laughing, shooting pool, dancing about, having drinks, having a good time. And then all of a sudden you're, BAM!
If you ever fired off a 12-gauge pump shotgun, that's about how it was.
Because there was nails everywhere. And I saw blood on the dance floor and all.
This investigation has taken an ominous turn.
We will be searching out the possibility that we have a serial bomber.
There are similarities to those 3 other explosions that rocked Atlanta. The bomb that went off in Atlanta's Centennial Park last July also was placed in a backpack. Nails were used in that bomb, as well as in the second of 2 bombs that exploded last month at an Atlanta clinic where abortions are performed. Sources close to the investigation tell NBC News there are differences in those 5 bombs, too. Nails used for shrapnel were longer this time, and the backpack was described as ratty. As in the double bombing last month, there was no warning. But Atlanta Police Chief Beverly Harvard says someone did call after the explosion.
I'm not going to go into any details about it.
Atlanta Mayor Bill Campbell.
We clearly believe that we are dealing with a deranged killer, but one who is very clever as well.
A chilling thought to guide investigators as once again they comb for clues after a double bombing. Bob Dotson, NBC News, Atlanta.
Yes. So thanks, Bob Dotson. I think that's the same guy that reported on the first one that we watched a minute ago. All right. I think it's time for an ad break. We have another bombing to go over. But before we do that, I'm going to go to katiez.com because nobody sponsors the show. So if you like what I'm doing here, I put a lot of work into this episode. I did so much research. So I hope it's coming across. But if you like it, go ahead and do a super chat. We'll give Zena a treat right now if you do. Or you can go over to katiez.com and check out the merchandise. We have all sorts of merchandise over here. Obviously, the featured collection is for Patriot Jam, which just happened on the 27th of July. And you can find my merchandise, Iggy Normus Jr.'s merchandise, that King collection that I was talking about a minute ago is there. Also, KFAR stuff is there. Sunset Saints is there. But what I really want to point out is my merchandise. You can get an Overruled t-shirt. You can get a True Crime with Zena t-shirt. Look at, she's laying right. She's sleeping just like she is in the video right now on the t-shirt. That's what she does around here. She takes a little nap. There is sweatshirts, there's hoodies, there's the little bandanas for your dog. All the Crimeland stuff is there, all of the things. So go ahead and check that out. I would appreciate it. And if you don't want any merchandise, feel free to do a little donation. I don't mind that either. Yes, I think Zena does need a treat. Society Red says Zena needs a little treat. So she definitely does. I have different size treats to choose from depending on the donation size. All right, back to the show. Back to the show, I said. There we go. I have to spin through all these pictures again. There's got to be an easier way to do this. So, there's a picture of the explosion from the other side lounge. I think it's the next one. It like blew the whole back door off. Oh, maybe I did not. Did I skip past it? Oh yeah, here it is. Look at this is through the back door. Crazy. Thank you very much for the $2 super chat persons. We're gonna wake Zena up for this. Hi Zena. Parsons loves you very much. That's for you. Could you do a little shake? Oh, that's so nice. Thank you, Parson. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, look at the size of this hole in the side of the building. Isn't that crazy? So, just like the last one, Eric goes back to the hills of North Carolina, and he doesn't hide out again. He just has all of his stuff ready to hit the road. And nobody ever comes for him. No one ever comes. So with the anniversary, a year later, the anniversary of Roe versus Wade is coming up again. And so since there's been so many bombings in Atlanta is like covered up with federal agents and law enforcement and stuff like that. So he's like, I need a new place. He decides on Birmingham, Alabama, which is like very close to here. It's not too far. It's just up, it's west of here on I-20. I want to say it's like an hour and a half drive. So instead of driving 2 hours to get to Atlanta from North Carolina, he's driving 3.5 to get to Birmingham. He ends up picking the New Women All Women Clinic on the south side of Birmingham. He had made the trip to Birmingham from North Carolina in early December, and there was 3 abortion clinics there, and he looked at all 3 of them. He decided on the New Women Clinic because he had switched in that 11 months that had passed from the nightclub bombing. He had upgraded his devices to be remote control now instead of on a timer. Before he was just using like a rudimentary like kitchen timer where he would just like set it for an hour out or 20 minutes out or however long he wanted. And now he's got like he went to like little hobby stores and got what you would use to build like a remote control car and stuff like that, or remote control whatever, and he hooked it up to the bombs now to where he could detonate the bombs by remote control. The only problem is he had to have a clear line of sight to where the bomb was. It didn't really work. He tested it out in the mountains in that 11 months, but it wouldn't detonate if there was buildings or trees and stuff blocking the signal. So where the women's clinic is located is, oh, I thought I had a map pulled up. Apparently I didn't. But there's a hill just to the south, Red Mountain, I think it's called. Let me pull up the map. So unprepared. Birmingham. There we are. Red Mountain. Let's find Red Mountain. Okay. So this is Red Mountain here, and the new women's clinic was located over here at the time. So from the top of this mountain, he had a clear line of sight to this building here, and that's what he was planning on doing, is coming up here to there's like a Vulcan statue there, and there's like a park, and there's a parking lot there where he could see straight to that new women's building. Sorry, I want to get these in the right order. Okay. We're getting there. So he scoped out 3 different ones. That's the only one that had a vantage point where he could detonate the bomb. Rudolph made the trip to Birmingham again 5 days before the attack. He watched the routine of the clinic workers and decided on an early morning detonation would be the best thing. So the night before, he did 2 bombs again. So the night before, he planted the one that was supposed to go off second, and the morning of, he went down there and planted the one that was supposed to go off first, like early in the morning before anybody got there. Now, keep in mind, people like the security guard got there at like 7 in the morning. So he was there at like 4 in the morning planting this device. On January 29th, 1998, Rudolph parked his truck on Ashwood Lane and Beckham Drive, which is like right up over here in these apartment buildings. It was the Valley View Apartments where he parked his truck. He walked down the hill towards the new women's clinic. He planted, like I said, the bomb the night before. He walked through Rast Park, and when he reached a dentist office parking lot where he had a clear view, he walked over to see the building or to see the bomb, and he saw that there was a nurse standing in the doorway pointing at the toolbox where the bomb was in this planter, like in this bush, and a security guard bending down over it. So he had not been planning on detonating yet, but he saw that they had found it, so he blew it up right then and there. The bomb was hidden beneath a shrub, and Robert Sanderson, who was a 35-year-old off-duty police officer working as a security guard, was killed instantly, and nurse Emily Lyons, age 41, is seriously injured. A student at the University of Alabama was doing laundry and saw a man with long hair. Well, he heard the explosion, so he looks out the window and he sees a guy with long hair walking swiftly away from where the explosion happened, where everyone else is looking towards where the explosion happened, because there was just an explosion. He's like, that's odd. So he comes out of the laundry room and comes outside to see what's going on, and he sees the same dude all of a sudden doesn't have long hair anymore. Eric Rudolph was wearing a wig and sunglasses to disguise himself. And so this kid saw him with the wig and then all of a sudden saw him without the wig. And he's like, that's strange. I should follow this guy. And he does just that. So he goes and gets in his car. By the time he gets in his car, he sees him walking down the street towards this 20th Street right here. And he thought that Eric Rudolph had turned north, and Eric Rudolph actually turned south because remember, he's parked up over here by these apartments. So the kid loses him, and he's driving around for several minutes, like 20 minutes, driving around looking for him and doesn't find him. So he ends up going to a McDonald's. The McDonald's used to be here. It's not there anymore, the McDonald's, but it used to be here. And he ends up going into this McDonald's. He can't find the guy, but he wants to call 911 and tell them what he saw because obviously there was an explosion. This guy is weird. I need to report it to the police. So he's in the McDonald's, begs the workers to use their phone, which is behind the counter. This is like people didn't really have cell phones that much back then. So this is pre cell phones. And I see you live to the max. I will be with you in 1 second. Let me finish this bombing and then I'll read your super chat. I appreciate it. Inside the McDonald's, there's a law student who's eating breakfast and he doesn't really have anything else to do that day. So he's overhearing this guy frantic on the phone. Like they had even trouble understanding this guy because he was in such a panic because he was just in this like chase in his head looking for the suspect and he lost him. So he's trying to explain to 911 as the law student's listening to him and the kid's on the phone behind the counter. The kid looks up out the window and he sees Eric Rudolph walking past the McDonald's, actually sees him and is like, holy cow, he's right there. I see him. I see him. Let's go get him. So they both go outside, this law student and the kid who originally was doing laundry, that guy, and starts to follow him. But Eric Rudolph doesn't stay on the streets. He cuts through this wooded area where you can't really you can't drive back here. So he cuts through this path. They call it the kudzu path, which is not technically an established path, but people would use it as a cut through, but you can't drive through there. So the guy with the car, the law student, knows that this path goes up here to up Red Hill behind the park. So he goes up here and as he gets to the top of the hill, he sees Eric Rudolph getting into his pickup truck and drives away. So this guy jots down his license plate number on the McDonald's cup. This is how Eric Rudolph gets caught. So January 30th, so just a few days later, 1998, law enforcement agencies begin looking for Rudolph after the witness statements are all taken and they figure out that it's a gray 1998 Nissan pickup truck that they're looking for. It's got North Carolina plates on it. They track the plates. They figure out where he is. And keep in mind, Eric Rudolph had been moving from place like apartment to apartment using different names and stuff for years before this, since the 1996 attack. It's now 1998. So he is really good at laying low. Take a super chat break before we get into how they caught this guy. Well, we need to get into how he stayed on the run for 5 years first. Thank you very much. Life to the Max says KT is the bomb for doing all this research. Made sure I didn't miss this one. Xena is the bomb for the hard work and modeling for the mug. Yes, she is. Thank you very much. She gets a big milk bone for this one. We're going to give her diabetes right now. This is a regular size milk bone. Can you believe it? She usually gets the mini ones. Do a touch. Thank you. Do a shake. Thank you. Do a shake with this hand. Oh, okay. Do a shake with this hand. Thank you. All right. Oh, she's very happy. Thank you very much, Life to the Max. I appreciate that. She appreciates it. Back to the story. Let's see what I have coming up here as far as tabs. I think we're going to switch back to the presentation. Go through all the pictures again. Oh, I guess I can switch it like this, huh? I don't know what number we were on. Okay, so here's the damage to the outside of the New Woman Clinic. So it did a lot of damage. It was a big bomb, and this is the first one that he actually saw it explode. Zena, get in your spot. Get in your spot. Thank you. We're in the middle of a show here. Get in your spot. Go. Hey, get in your spot. Can you believe her? Trying to take a break in the middle of a show? How are we supposed to make the big bucks if you're not on camera? Anyway. So he actually saw these people blow up. This is the first time that happened. All the rest of them, he put the bomb down, whether it's in a backpack or a toolbox or whatever it is, and walks away and just is already on the road by the time they go off. He's already halfway back to North Carolina by the time the stuff goes off. This one, he watched it happen. Just crazy. I don't know. So now they're on to him. They have Eric Rudolph in their sights. They know where he lives. They're getting there. So he's obviously paying attention to the news while this happened, because this is several days after. He's already been home and relaxing. He even went to Blockbuster and rented a movie. He was in the middle of watching a movie when he heard on the radio that do you see Zena side-eyeing me right now? She is so mad at me for making her get in her spot. She's staring me down. Just plots. Thank you. Wow, that was an evil look she gave me. I'm sorry. That was very distracting. Did you see her looking at me? Holy cow. Where was I? Oh, so the cops get to his house. The movie that he had rented from Blockbuster is still playing. That's how close it was of him getting away. The movie from Blockbuster is on the TV halfway through. He had heard it on the radio, grabbed his stuff. Remember, he had all his stuff packed up, throws it all in the back of his pickup, and hits the road. We don't see him again for 5 years. That's how he hit the road. He hit the road a lot. So, and on February 7th, so like, I don't know, a week later, they find his truck abandoned. It was discovered by 2 raccoon hunters in the woods, 8 miles from Murphy, North Carolina. Hundreds of law enforcement officers conduct a door-to-door search and comb the woods, but Rudolph eludes them. Let me show you these woods in North Carolina, because I drive through there a lot. I mean, and by I drive through, Mr. Zed drives through while I'm a passenger princess. But this is the road that we take to get to my friend Steven's house. So we're down here in North Georgia, and he's up here in Tennessee. So this is the road that we take through the Nantahala Forest. There's Marble, which is where he lived on Vengeance Creek. Here's Murphy. Andrews is where the task force was stationed to try to find him. But look at the amount of just nothing in this area. Just mountains. No towns, no roads, no nothing. It's like a needle in the haystack. The only place that there's anything is along this highway. Once you get off of this highway, there's nothing. And that's where he was. He was hiding out in nothing. So February 14th, a federal warrant is issued charging Rudolph with the Birmingham, Alabama bombing. On March 8th, so a couple months later, 1998, to protest what he feels is the persecution of his brother, Eric Rudolph's brother. Let me put this up on this. This is a crazy side note. Eric Rudolph's brother sets up a camera and he streams this to this is pre-YouTube, so he's streaming it to some chat room or something. I don't even know what they had back then in 1998. But he takes a circular saw and cuts off his own hand in protest to them hunting his brother in the woods. A month-long manhunt in the mountains of western North Carolina for the suspect in the bombing of an Alabama abortion clinic has provoked an unusual protest from the fugitive's brother. He has sawn off one of his own hands. The FBI confirmed yesterday that Daniel Rudolph maimed himself at his home in Charleston on Monday. He videotaped himself amputating the hand with an electric circular saw, then sent the tape to the FBI. The grisly act was being seen as an appeal to the FBI to end its search for the brother, Eric Rudolph, believed to be hiding deep in the mountains. A $100,000 reward is offered for information leading to his arrest. By the way, this award or reward gets much bigger by the end of this thing. Right now, apparently a month in, it's $100,000, which is a lot of money in 19. It's a lot of money now. What am I talking about? $100,000 is not a small amount of money, right? But it gets much bigger. Police have been hunting Rudolph since charging him with the 29 January attack in Birmingham. I think this must be a British publication. The January 29th attack in Birmingham, Alabama. One off-duty policeman was killed and a nurse was seriously injured in the blast at Birmingham's new all-women clinic. The device used in the attack was a homemade nail bomb hidden in a plant pot. The FBI also have been searching for evidence linking Rudolph, age 31, to the Centennial Park explosion at the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta. An FBI spokesperson in Charleston expressed regret over the self-mutilation. Surgeons in Atlanta were struggling yesterday to reattach Mr. Rudolph's hand. Neighbors in Charleston described the medical emergency personnel arriving at his home and searching on the ground for the missing limb. FBI officials voiced hope that the fugitive would be captured by May at the latest. In the meantime, the manhunt was extended into the popular Smoky Mountains National Park. Yeah, a family of wackos. I mean, not all their ideas are bad, but the way they go about things, very bad, is all I'm saying about that. Wowzers. All right, so we're back here in North Carolina. On May 5th, 1998, Rudolph is added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and a $1 million reward is offered for information leading to his arrest. $1 million. They want this guy bad. They want this guy very bad. $1 million in 1998. Not as if that's not life-changing money in 2024. In 1998, that is like an unthinkable amount of money. That's a lot. It's a lot of money. On July 11th, in Andrews, North Carolina, a health food store owner named George Nordman tells authorities that Rudolph came to his Nantahala home July 7th, asking to buy food and other supplies. Norman says at first he agreed, then he changed his mind. Okay. So that's what he told the authorities. But what Eric Rudolph says in his book is that Nordman set out all the supplies for him to take and agreed to not call the cops for a couple of days, which it's interesting that the story lines up in the fact that he didn't report it to the authorities till July 11th, but stuff went missing from his house on July 7th. So Nordman's basically saying, yeah, he stole a bunch of supplies from my house and I didn't tell you about it for several days. Whereas Eric Rudolph is saying, yeah, he agreed to give me the supplies and he left them out for me. And so the stories don't line up very much. I think that Nordman probably should have been charged in this. He never was. He's passed away now, so they will never charge him. But I don't think that Nordman is the only person that helped Eric Rudolph in the 5 years that he was hiding out in the woods. Going through his book, I'm just going to go off script here for a minute. They knew that he was familiar with the Nantahala Forest, which is up here. So most of the efforts to search for him were searching up in this area here. He knew that because he was perched on a ridge at one point in the Snowbird Mountains, which is just north of Andrews. And watching Andrews, there's a airport here where they set up their command post at this airport. So he was set up on these mountains just above the airport, watching to see where the helicopters were going, to see where they were searching. When he got supplies from Nordman in Andrews, he made sure that his scent led back, because he knew they were going to use police dogs. He made sure his scent led back up to the northeast towards the Nantahala Mountains, and then backtracked back to just outside of Murphy and Fires Creek, which is down over here. So he was hiding out in these mountains over here because he knew that they were searching for him up here. Most of the time he was down here, but he covered so much ground. He goes over in his book all the different mountain ridges and gaps and stuff like that he was at, and where he had several caches of supplies buried all over these mountains in different places. And when he would run out of stuff in one spot, he would move to the next area and, set up camp there. Most of the time he was in Fires Creek, and we know that he does end up getting arrested in Murphy, which is down over here. So a lot of the times he was in these woods or these mountains over here by the Fires Creek. Just the area is called Fires Creek. At one point, there was a campground, Apple Valley Campground, that he purposely led the dogs to because he knew he wasn't going to be there. So he was kind of outsmarting them every step of the way, according to him, I should say. So October 14th, they finally are able to connect the Centennial Olympic Park bombing, the New Women clinic, or sorry, the North Side clinic bombing and the Other Side nightclub bombing to Eric Rudolph, and they charge him formally in those 3 bombings instead. So at first they just charged him with the Birmingham one where they had witnesses, they saw him driving away, all of that. Then in October of 1998, they finally charge him with the other bombings. May 31st, 2003, Eric Rudolph is captured and arrested in Murphy, North Carolina by a 21-year-old police officer named Jeff Postel. And we have a little video of Jeff telling us about how here, we'll play this one first. And then I have a news conference pulled up.
It was one of the largest searches of its kind. Where was Eric Robert Rudolph? That was the question that for years could not be answered.
I wouldn't say it's tough, but it's a job that we have to do. It's our assignment, and we have to carry it out until it's over.
Search teams combed the mountains of North Carolina looking for any sign that Rudolph was there. Nobody believed he would leave.
He's from this area. He knows the area incredibly well. He grew up here. He is a survivalist. He can live up there forever.
There were reports he was spotted buying groceries at this bilo. Officers checked his home, lights were on, the front door was open, but he was not there. His truck was later found deep in the woods.
And nobody's bothering you, right?
Well,
in 1996, the search began.
The bombing at Centennial Olympic Park this morning was an evil act of terror.
Over time, investigators learned more and more about the men they were so desperate to find. Rudolph is believed to belong to the Christian identity, known as a white supremacist sect, which is anti-gay, anti-Semitic, and anti-foreigner. It was the makeup of the bombs that led investigators to connect the bombings in Birmingham and Atlanta.
And we think that this is an opportune time for us to report to the public, but also to request their assistance in identifying the person or persons who may have had these components.
The search itself lasted 5 years. One of the FBI's most wanted, now no longer on the run. Nigel Robertson, WIFF News 4.
Thanks, Nigel. Here's another report.
Rudolph, the bomb-making terrorist who killed 2 and hid in the mountains, is giving away his life story. He's serving a life sentence in federal prison.
News 13's Cheryl Barber joins us with more about Rudolph's online book. Cheryl, you talked with the officer who caught him.
Sergeant Jeff Postel is now an officer with the Boston College Police. He tells me in a phone interview that the self-admitted murderer continues to work on his image from behind the prison walls.
It's a way for him to express his beliefs in some form.
Sergeant Jeff Postel isn't surprised by Eric Rudolph's latest attempt at self-promotion.
But it's also a way to continue, if you will, his persona of being a folk hero, which he's far from.
Rudolph's brother published the bomber's autobiography called Between the Lines of Drift, the Memoirs of a Militant, in February of this year. Now it's free online for everyone to see. It details his anti-abortion, anti-gay beliefs and how he carried out 4 bombings in Atlanta and Birmingham in the 90s. In the book, he describes how he planned the bombing during the '96 Olympics, carrying a 100-pound bomb into Centennial Olympic Park. He also tells how he broke into an Asheville explosives company and stole 50 pounds of dynamite. After bombings in Atlanta and Birmingham abortion clinics, he hid in the western North Carolina mountains for 5 years. Murphy police officer Jeff Postel remembers the relief he felt after catching Rudolph dumpster diving behind a grocery store 10 years ago.
Just taking a deep breath and realizing that we just ended something that could have ended in a tragic situation, and we didn't have to end it tragically, and I've always been thankful for that.
Sergeant Postel says Rudolph's book has no terrorist information that's new to the internet, but he says Rudolph's arrest shows how basic police work can take a dangerous person off the streets.
And to be honest with you, that's ultimately what led to the capture, was being out there doing the jobs that we are hired to do.
And Sergeant Postel continues doing that job. Last week he was the first to be awarded the Shaw.
All right, thanks for that. So this next video I'm going to show you guys is it's a 27-minute long news conference that happened the day after the arrest, but I'm just going to show you the part where the officer that arrested him speaks about it. Now, keep in mind, I don't think I told you this, so I'm telling you for the first time. The reason why Eric Rudolph was behind that dumpster is because he had tracked out when this specific grocery store turned over their produce. So he knew on certain days there would be fresh produce in the dumpsters. And he watched from these, he was up in these mountains watching them do their investigation from afar. And he knew that this officer would drive past this specific grocery store, drive behind it at a certain time on that certain night. And then once he drove past it, he wouldn't come back for a while. So he would wait in let's pull up the map so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So there's Murphy. There is, hold on, I'll find it. Am I too far? I think I'm too far. Here we go. Okay. So this is the grocery store, the Save-A-Lot. And he knew that the officer would drive past this Save-A-Lot, like patrol the parking lot and wouldn't be back for a while. So he would hide out in this little strip of woods right here and wait for him to pass and then go check out this dumpster where he knew that there was going to be fresh produce. And one of the things that he was lacking was vitamins. So he needed um, the fresh produce to get vitamin C and other nutrients, because all of his stashes had a lot of carbs. It had a lot of like rice and beans and stuff like that in his caches that he had hidden out in the mountains. So what he was lacking is the fresh vegetables. So in this dumpster, there would be fresh vegetables on a certain day. So he'd just hide out like right over here. He'd cross underneath this bridge and hide out and wait for the patrol to pass. On this specific night, the cop passed by there and then did another loop behind the store. So once he passed, Eric came out to go to that dumpster. And as soon as he got out into the middle of this road, or this, pass through back here, the cop rounded the corner and caught him in the headlights, and he went and hid behind these milk crates that are stacked over here. And of course, Officer Postel saw him do that and it's like, come out with your hands up. And in the book, Eric says he thought about running back. He's like, if I would have made it back across that field, they would have never caught me. I had just moved somewhere else and they would have never caught me. I'd be gone. By the time the sun came up, I would have been long gone. They'd have never found me. And he said he was just kind of sick of living in the woods and being on the run. So he kind of let himself get captured at that point. He kind of made a game time decision to get caught right then. All right, here's the news conference from the day after he was caught.
Along how treacherous these mountains are up here and what you can run across in these mountains. And when you arrested him, he was wearing jogging shoes, which doesn't fit a scenario that I would think of being able to handle these mountains.
Yeah, it is summertime, and jogging shoes will be relatively comfortable this time of year in the mountains.
Yeah.
Can Officer Postel tell us about this one?
Sure.
Officer
Postel. How you doing? How are you?
Look at this baby cop who ended up catching the most wanted fugitive in the United States. He's 21 years old. He had not even been on the force for a year yet. He's very humble about it too. He seems like a good guy, is what I'm saying.
Robert Rudolph this morning behind the Save-A-Lot Center there in Did you know that it was Eric Robert Rudolph?
No, sir, I didn't. I was under the impression I had a potential breaking and entering or a prowler in that area.
Walk us through step by step, if you would, of what happened this morning.
Okay. I was on a patrol in the east part of town doing business checks at one of the shopping centers. Came around the corner, turned my headlights off. That's how you usually proceed around the building. Observed a male subject squatted down in the middle of the road. As I approached, he observed me and he took off running and got in behind some milk crates which were stacked up there. Not knowing who it was or what he had, I took safety into concern and advised him to come out. He complied to everything I asked to do.
When did you realize it?
At the sheriff's office after taking him in.
Officer Postel, how do you feel now? I mean, in retrospect, knowing, I know it was, well, I don't want to say it was routine, but you go through this a lot. Now, in retrospect, you captured one of the most wanted fugitives in this country.
That's just in a day's work. Don't really deserve any credit. Just doing what I was hired to do.
How long have you been on the job, officer?
I've been on the job for nearly a year, sir.
So, officer, let me ask you this. So, you spotted the guy at Thomas' job. So walk us through it from there. What kind of conversation you had?
I can't really comment on that.
They've already said he gave false statements. Can you walk us through that part of the case?
Pretty much, he had no ID on him, and he supplied me a name, and that's about all I can comment. He was very cooperative, not a bit disrespectful, very respectful.
Officer, there's a big reward out in this case for the person who captures Eric Robert Rudolph. Do you think you deserve that reward in any way?
Not going to comment. Like I said, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Do you guys think he deserves the reward? I kind of do. I think that this guy should have got the $1 million. He didn't, because he was doing his job. He was part of law enforcement. But I think he should have gotten The reward. Society Red says in the chat that he did learn a lot of his skills from being in the Army, and that is true. He was in the Army. He was dishonorably discharged for smoking marijuana. And according to him, like, I keep going back to the book because it was a very good book, but according to him, he got dishonorably discharged on purpose, which I don't think is true at all. There's a lot of stuff that I don't think is true in the book. A lot of it does have the ring of truth to it. Read it for yourself. It's free online. Just type in Between the Lines of Drift, Eric Rudolph in the Google search. It'll come up in a PDF file. It's free. It's a good read. But I don't think he got discharged on purpose, as he says. But he did get dishonorably discharged from the military. But he does say in the book that he did learn a lot of these skills, not only from his childhood. He was born in Florida and moved to Western North Carolina when he was about 10 years old. So he did kind of grow up in these woods. He grew up knowing how to forage for food and, what's edible, what's not, those sort of things from living in the area as well.
I did. I'm 21.
Did it ever dawn in your mind before he was taken to the jail that this might be Eric Robert Rudolph? Did you ever think that you may run into him?
Never had that impression to ever run across him. However, there was a deputy sheriff there that stated that he struck a very similar resemblance to Mr. Rudolph.
Did you grow up around here?
I did.
In Murphy?
In Andrews.
Officer, I know you're just doing your job, but you've got to feel something that's unpleasing inside you about capturing this man.
I think I put a lot of people's feelings at ease, a lot of stress that was involved in this situation. It's a closure to it, I believe. And that's like I said, that's about it. I'm just glad I was out there doing my job and was glad I was in the right place at the right time.
What do you think about all this media attention?
It's different.
Probably not going to end soon.
It's real different, not used to it.
What was your reaction right at that aha moment when they said, "This is the guy"?
Nervous, relieved, basically that.
Did you and your colleagues and the sheriffs go, yeah, was there a moment? And describe the scene in the squad room or wherever.
Rather not comment on that.
Did he say anything was he in the dumpster and you got him out?
No, sir.
He came out? Or?
Like I said, he's very cooperative and came out when I asked him to.
Out of the dumpster?
No, sir. He had hid behind some milk crates that were stacked up there.
Did you draw a weapon on him?
I did.
Did he say anything to you at all?
No, sir. Can't comment nothing like that.
So he's never actually in the dumpster itself. He's floating around in that area behind the stores.
At the time I observed him, yes.
He's in the middle of the road behind the stores, heading towards the dumpster, or you wouldn't even clear with that?
I'm not sure where he was headed.
Did he make a move to run?
He did.
How often did you and your colleagues over the past year, or however long you've been on the force, talk about him and the possibility of maybe running into him someday?
Name's always been circulated. We've always been on the lookout for him. Like I said, the name's always circulated, so we've tried to keep our eyes open for him.
I think what he's been doing all of this time.
Pardon?
Did he say what he's been doing all of this time?
I can't comment on that, sir.
Officer, did you have to draw your weapon anytime?
Yes.
Are you
That's all the question I want to answer.
people around here, and did he appear to be one of them to you initially?
No, sir.
What did you think he was initially?
I did not have a clue.
Thank you, officer. Thank you.
Before we
All right. So that was the gentleman who captured Eric Robert Rudolph. Nobody got the reward money, by the way. Not a single person. I want to play just a little bit of this video, and I think we're going to be done. Let me know if you have any questions in the chat. I think I went over everything, but Society Red did bring up the military thing that I think I did forget to mention. So if you have any other questions, let me know.
North Carolina mountains, ground zero for the largest, most expensive fugitive search in United States history.
For 2 years, we have worked ceaselessly to solve these heinous crimes.
One man versus the power of the United States government. multiple bombings in 2 states. 3 dead.
This is just going over the resources they spent trying to catch this guy for 5 years. And remember how I told you that there was that airport that they kind of used as their home base for the helicopters to go out and look for him and stuff? He was on the road behind the airport road, it's called, stealing vegetables from people's vegetable gardens in the summertime with their headquarters set up right there. He was watching their every move.
And more than 100 hurt. It all started and ended in a small Carolina town at the hands of one of the most dangerous men to ever walk the streets of Murphy, North Carolina.
A part of western North Carolina was literally a hidden minefield. And indeed, had we not entered these plea agreements, Eric Rudolph might have ended up killing more people after he was imprisoned or executed than he ever did when he was free.
This is the story of the capture of Eric Robert Rudolph.
25 years ago, pipe bombs exploded inside the Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. The blast killed 2 people and brought to a halt the 1996 Olympics.
The plotting, the planning, the bombs, all built right here in North Carolina. As Fox 46 chief investigator Jody Barr found out, there was a chance that the Atlanta bomber might have never been identified.
Eric Rudolph spent nearly 7 years a free man after traveling 2 hours from Murphy, North Carolina to Atlanta to bomb the 1996 Olympics. He spent most of the time after that here on the run. Although Rudolph's capture by this dumpster and the investigations ended nearly 20 years ago, there's still debate raging over whether someone helped Eric Rudolph.
There was no cars in the parking lot. Flipped on my alley light here, came around the corner, and bam. Saw him right there.
Jeffrey Postel wasn't practicing any extraordinary police work. He thought he'd simply caught someone trying to break in to this grocery store.
I observed the silhouette of individual kind of crouched down, kind of in a sneaky looking mode, walking towards the rear of the
I'm going to pause it really quick because we have another super chat that came in over on Rumble. I just checked. Thank you very much. Let me share that. Why is it not? I don't know how I can make it. Maybe if I do this. There we go. Great presentation. I lived in Atlanta for years and was here during the Olympics. You shared some info today I'd never heard. Nice work, KTZ. Thank you very much for the super chat. Of course, we give Zena a dog biscuit because we appreciate you appreciating us. Zena, you ready? You think she'll catch? You guys want to take odds, take bets on whether she'll catch this or not? Nope, didn't catch it at all. Not even close. All right, back to this. I wanted to show you this video that I'm showing right now just because it goes into the fact that the people of this small community in North Carolina treated him as a folk hero. There's even still some places there today that have signs up that say like Eric Rudolph ate his dinner here or like he frequented our store here. They still to this day treat this man like a folk hero after setting off bombs all over the Southeast, which is a little kooky to me.
Save-A-Lot grocery store and fled to the rear of the grocery store here. He hid in behind the milk crates. And stayed there until after a few moments of me giving him commands to come out.
Postel says the man told officers he'd hitchhiked from Ohio and ended up in Murphy.
He gave me the name of Jerry Wilson with a date of birth, and he came back with no match, no record on file. So that kind of raised the red flag.
Postel took the man to the station to dig deeper into his story.
The sheriff's deputy that had arrived pulled me off to the side and says, you know, he really has an uncanny resemblance to Eric Rudolph. And I said, do you really think so? Because probably like anyone else, I would have never imagined that this would be Eric Robert Rudolph.
Jeffrey Postel was 16 when Rudolph bombed the 1996 Olympics. He went on to join a nearby police department as an explorer. Over the next few years, he watched more than 200 federal agents flood into Murphy on the hunt for a serial bomber. a fugitive with $1 million reward for his capture.
So I had really had a front row seat to one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history as a teenager.
Postel was 21 years old with 10 months experience on the streets when he caught the man behind the Murphy Save-A-Lot. Back at the station, he pulled up the FBI's most wanted list and printed the Rudolph wanted poster.
I started out with hair color, check. Eye colors, check. Height, check. Until I get down to noticeable scars. And Eric Rudolph's description had a scar to his chin. And I remember very, very clearly, he was in a chair with his hands behind his back, handcuffed, and he was staring at the ceiling. And the scar on his chin was glaring right at me. And I remember all four of us going into the room where he was at, and we took the FBI wanted poster and we held it up behind his head. And we're kind of looking back and forth, all of us in like a U shape around him, kind of looking and going back and forth. Tell us who you are. And he said, what's the paper say? And we all said, that's not.
What's the paper say? He basically just admitted, yeah, that's me. You have my picture. You're holding my own picture next to my head. Of course that's me. And if you notice, when he was captured, we saw the footage of him like being brought out of the station stuff. He was clean shaven. He had a haircut. He was well taken care of. For whatever reason, I don't believe he was living on his own in the woods as much as he claims in his book that he was, just because of his condition when he was found. Yes, he had lost a bunch of weight, and I guarantee he spent many months alone in the forest, just by himself with his caches of food and stuff like that. But there's no way that he was that clean shaven and looked that well kempt after living in the woods for 5 years, so I'm sure other people needed to be prosecuted. Like I said, he was held up as a folk hero in that town. People in that town did not care about money. They lived a happy life without money. And even though there was $1 million reward out, he knew who he could go to, like that Nordman guy, who wasn't going to turn him in. Nordman could have definitely turned him in and collected $1 million. He didn't do it. He left the food out for him to get. So.
The question, tell us who you really are. After just a moment, he looked up and says, I'm Eric Robert Rudolph, and you've got me.
The arrest ended the 5-year manhunt in the same town Rudolph built the Olympics bombs, the bombs he planted outside an Atlanta nightclub, and the 2 bombs detonated outside this Atlanta abortion clinic. This was the world's first look at Eric Rudolph, just hours after Postel captured him in May 2003. His appearance fuels a debate still unsettled.
That's what I was
nearly
saying.
20 years later.
Did he look like someone who had just spent 5.5 years in the mountains?
He certainly did not look like that he had been living on his own for a very long period of time. He had a little bit of stubble growth on his face. His hair was cut short, almost like a buzz cut. But I do think that it's hard to believe that he would not have had some help along the way.
Rudolph told his side of the story in this 2013 The Memoirs of a Militant. He claims he survived alone, without help. He'd kill wild game, eat salamanders, and fish from the rivers in the mountains, even dumpster diving for food. He stole grain from these silos outside of town and to store at his campsites, tucked away in the mountains outside Murphy.
I passed that sign.
Rudolph admits he also stole from this garden along Airport Road.
And it's a 3-cornered piece of land.
That garden belongs to Gene Webb.
Paper said, Rudolph's in your garden. So I don't know whether he was or not.
Gene Webb noticed vegetables going missing from his garden. When you're a gardener, I have a garden. You know when stuff is about to be ripe or ready to be picked, and then all of a sudden it's missing. You notice that stuff is missing, and you think, well, maybe an animal got it. But when it's picked, it's different from when an animal gets it. It's like eaten off the vine. It's not picked and gone. And he didn't call the authorities. And I don't think this gentleman and this nice elderly gentleman in North Carolina should have been arrested for helping Rudolph. His garden was getting stolen from, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who kind of knew where he was at and just didn't say anything at all.
Probably was.
But you notice somebody was out there.
Somebody was stealing.
Could a man spend 5 years living off the land without help out here?
A lot of people had garden back then. I mean, just about everybody. But look at the population now. It's over double, triple. Houses everywhere.
Probably couldn't pull that off today.
Be hard.
I am convinced that he didn't get help from anywhere. The reason I'm convinced is because as much as people up there many people up there sympathized with him, there was $1 million offered for his capture or information leading to his capture.
Richard Jaffe was one of Eric Rudolph's federal attorneys. After years of investigation, the feds never charged anyone with helping Eric Rudolph.
When the FBI comes and pressures people, as they are supposed to do, to try to get people to help them find a fugitive.
And tell the truth.
And tell the truth, exactly. And they never identified one person that helped him.
Between 1996 and 97, 4 bombs exploded across Atlanta. In the next 18 months, the government still did not have a suspect.
We will spare no effort to find out who was responsible for this murderous act. We will track them down. We will bring them to justice.
After Atlanta, Rudolph slipped back into his life in North Carolina.
Just look at these mountains. There's nothing out there. He could have been on any one of these ridges at any time, and nobody would have known. And I don't know if you've ever been to this area. Like I said, I drive through there quite often. In the last few years, probably 2 or 3 times a year in the last 5 years or so. And it is just a vast wilderness, which you don't find that often on the East Coast. But when you, like, that's one of the spots that you do find it. And he never went. They said they were looking for him in the Smoky Mountain National Park. That place is so populated. There's so many visitors. Millions of visitors go to Smoky Mountain National Park every year. He didn't go anywhere near there because he was trying not to be spotted by anyone, and like nobody, not a hiker, not like tourists, nothing. So he didn't go anywhere near Smoky Mountain National Park.
Carolina, plotting his next attack.
Another abortion clinic, this one in Birmingham, Alabama.
That attack happened in January 1998, the 24th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Rudolph planted a bomb outside this Birmingham abortion clinic. 2 witnesses spotted a man walking away from the blast as others ran toward it. Those men followed their suspect.
Jermaine is able to get up beside him, and he takes a piece of paper and writes down the tag number of the gray pickup truck.
That man scurried off and hopped into a gray truck and sped away toward North Carolina.
A gray pickup truck registered in his name was seen near the clinic right after the explosion.
Rudolph dumped the truck in the Nantahala forest and went on the run. That truck was the first break investigators got, tying Eric Rudolph to any of the bombings.
Had Eric Rudolph never came to Birmingham and hit the switch on that bomb, the likelihood that he ever would have been caught, what do you think that would have been?
Never would have happened.
Rudolph was the only person charged in the bombing investigations. Despite that, Jaffe believes Rudolph might have gotten help carrying out those bombings.
You're not convinced, though, that Eric Rudolph was able to build a bomb in Murphy, to drive it here, scout the spot, plan it, sit back and wait. You don't think he acted alone, do you?
I do not think that anyone could have done this alone. I just don't see it.
That guy, he thinks that he lived in the forest for 5 years on his own, but doesn't think that he did the bombs alone. I think the exact opposite. I think he did all of the bombings alone, didn't tell anybody, but he didn't live in the forest on his own. So that's where we're at right now. I don't think that he had any help at all building the bombs. He learned all that in the military. He learned everything, all of the things that he did, he learned in the military. So it seems, I believe him when he says he didn't have help with any of the bombings. I'm not so sure about the living in the forest just because of how clean cut he was when he came out of the woods, guys.
His memoir explains how he did it. He traveled to Birmingham a month before the bombing and sat on this ridge overlooking the city and the abortion clinic and picked the spot where he'd detonate the bomb. Rudolph disguised the pipe bomb as a plant and placed it outside the clinic's door. From a few blocks away, he watched as an off-duty city police officer spotted the bomb. When the officer leaned over to get a closer look, Rudolph hit the switch. He killed the officer and gravely injured a clinic nurse.
He would actually sit at the top of this ridgeline and watch and take note of how often, how frequent the patrols would come through.
So Rudolph was watching you?
Absolutely.
In his final months on the run, Rudolph stalked the Save-A-Lot, noting delivery schedules and Jeffrey Postel's patrol habits. Rudolph wrote that he'd wait for Postel to pass, then cross this field toward the dumpster inside the red zone, looking for food, until that one night in Murphy, when his time ran out. Eric Rudolph pleaded guilty to each of the bombings but dodged the death penalty. He had one live bomb and 250 pounds of explosives buried in the mountains here. He agreed to tell the government where it all was in exchange for life sentences. He's currently serving multiple life sentences at a federal supermax in Colorado. The only time Eric Rudolph will ever see the outside of a prison again is when he dies. In Murphy, North Carolina, Jody Barr.
Thanks, Jody Barr. I appreciate that. So back to, I'll tell you the end of the story. Let's get back to the slideshow first, though, so we don't have to look at Judy Barr anymore. Back to the slideshow. Oh, there's the Save-A-Lot. So, June 3rd, 2003, he pleads not guilty in an arraignment hearing, but then when in 2005, April 8th, 2005, he ends up pleading guilty to all the charges against him in exchange for life sentences with no possibility of parole. In April 13th, 2005, he pled guilty to the bombing of the abortion clinic in Birmingham, Alabama. He also pled guilty to 3 Atlanta area bombings in Georgia. Then he released an 11-page statement blaming the violence on the legislation of abortion. July 18th, 2005, the U.S. District Judge Linwood Smith sentences Rudolph to 2 life terms in connection with the January 1998 bombing in Alabama. And on August 22nd, 2005, Rudolph apologizes to his victims and their families for the 1996 bombing of Centennial Olympic Park while appearing in court for sentencing. He does not apologize for any of the other attacks, which he has confessed to. He's sentenced to serve a total of 4 consecutive life sentences in prison, plus 120 years for the attacks. Moving along in February 2013, with help from his brother, Rudolph publishes his autobiography, Between the Lines of Drift, The Memoirs of a Militant. In March of 2013, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Birmingham, Alabama, states in court documents that it is seizing Rudolph's royalties from book sales, totaling $200, to pay back the $1 million Rudolph owes in restitution. When that happened, they ended up putting the book online for free, so they won't make any money from it, which it makes sense that if you're going to publish a book, they did the same thing with OJ when he published a book. They took all of the proceeds from it and gave it to the victims, which I totally understand. He had only made $200 by the time they did that dose, and then they just made it free. And lastly, on June 22nd, 2020, Rudolph filed an 11-page handwritten appellate motion to vacate 2 of his life sentences, claiming they were in violation of the Constitution and it's in excess of the maximum allowed by law. In July 2021, the judge denies Rudolph's motion. So he's basically saying that only 2 people died, so I can only get 2 life sentences. And they're like, nah, you can get more than 2 life sentences. And that's where we are now. He's in the same supermax as all of the bombers end up going in Colorado. From what I understand, he was in the same facility as the Unabomber and the guy who did the Oklahoma City bombing. All of those guys end up in the same supermax in Colorado. Anyway, that's the show, guys. What did you think? I hope you liked it. I enjoyed it. What do we have coming up? I got to look at my calendar. I don't have it written on my board, which is unusual for me. Oh, we're going to do a Crime Land next week, and here's why. It's my birthday, and I don't feel like doing any research this week. And I just did a lot of research. The one that we did, the Ezekiel Zayas case that we did last week, and this case took up a lot of time researching, and I kind of need a week off. So we're going to do a Crime Land next week, and we're going to have an online birthday party for me, I guess. I don't know. My birthday's the day after next Sunday's show. So I hope you all enjoyed this presentation of the Eric Rudolph story. When I first started looking into it, I saw the Richard Jewell movie, and I was thinking like, oh, that's interesting. I think, I want to cover the Olympic bombing or whatever. And then I started getting deeper into it and found out all these little tidbits of information about like all of the stuff about him hiding out in the woods and watching the feds do their investigation was interesting to me. He was like on a ridge line above that airport and would watch to see where the helicopters were taking off and going to see where they were searching like this week and then where they were searching the next week, and just would move his camp in the middle of the night to where they had already searched. There was one point where he was going to plant a bomb near where the investigators were stationed, and he ended up not doing that. So thank goodness for that. They did find a bunch of his caches out there after, in exchange for the plea agreement. He had to tell him where all the stuff was, and there was way more explosives hidden out there. So if they hadn't caught him, he could have blew up a lot more places. One interesting fact is all 3 of the 2 abortion clinics and the gay nightclub that he did bomb are all today, 2024, out of business, not operating anymore. So I thought that was an interesting fact to add in there. But other than that, I guess we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. And the end. See you later, guys. Bye.
I can't understand what you're saying. We're late stage in the catacombs. Shuffling a single card today. Broken table trying to play some ping pong. It's not subtle when we celebrate a magazine with the pages torn. My body cracks, knees buckling. I got a bad a mockingbird can't sing the same songs. My body cracks, knees buckling. I got a bad case of brain fog. Said I got a bad case of brain fog.